Hi, my name is Ezza Valdez for the Alchemist Kitchen, and we're here with Florencia of Cacao Lab. And so we're going to be talking about ceremonial cacao, what it is, how to take it, what ceremony in the first place. And Florencia will also give us a little bit of her own background and her own journey. So let's start out with that question, Florencia. It's like, what is ceremonial cacao?
Well, ceremonial cacao is the medicine of cacao, chocolate in its purest form. And many of us have tried chocolate. I think it's in almost every culture. But the connection to ceremonial cacao is using the fruit at its 100%. And it's also taking into consideration how the fruit has been grown, understanding that the plant of cacao carries a spirit. So through the process of ceremony, we come into relation with the spirit. And when we talk about ceremonial cacao, is really having that relation to all of the environment around us. So when we are talking about the development of the fruit of cacao, understanding the process, right, that it's done in the natural rhythms of how the ancestors, those who have come before us, have treated this relation with the plant. It's also taking into consideration the type of land that cacao is grown on, understanding that there's biodiversity on the land. Just like we gather in community with many different beings, it's important for the land to have biodiversity and having different types of plants that are coexisting amongst each other so they can share information, share nutrients. So, we when we think about ceremonial cacao, most of us go straight into understanding that cacao is used in ceremony. But it's much more than that. It's also understanding, how we use this plant to teach us how to come back to the natural rhythms of how our ancestors have lived, because they lived in ceremony. Everything was an offering, everything was a way of giving gratitude for life. And when we took something, there was an exchange, sacred reciprocity being given. So when we go through the process of cacao, after it's grown in as a land of biodiversity and having agroforestry being practiced, we then move into the way that we get it into a paste. So when you take the fruit usually takes about 6 months to develop, and then you have it ferment for 4 to 6 days. Usually more of a criollo and heirloom strain will be closer to 4 days. And there are some people that for conventional chocolate, for conventional cacao, are skipping this fermentation process. But this is really important, not just for the relation to spirit, it's also important for us to be able to absorb what this medicine is offering us. And I know that if you are listening to this through Alchemist Kitchen, we're aware that medicine is something that heals us, right, and brings us into harmony. And for the indigenous communities, medicine is anything that brings us into alignment, right, that connects mind, body, and spirit. So when we talk about cacao being medicine, it's that understanding that it's guiding us to come back into our center. So when the medicine of cacao is then fermented for that about 4 to 6 days, it's then roasted. And there are a lot of people that talk about the amazing benefits of raw cacao and raw chocolate. In some ways, I agree. But when we talk about ceremonial cacao, it's understanding that there's a tradition that has been passed down from generation to generation for thousands of years, mostly in Mesoamerica. And I study with the Mayan Tz'utujil community, and the Mayas roast the cacao. And as they're roasting the cacao, they bring in that sacred reciprocity of giving the offerings. So the smoke that comes out of the roasting is an offering to the energies that support us, to the creator and the former of life. So there's subtleties in the process of the cacao that are really bringing that exchange back, understanding that as we receive, we're giving back. And going back to the conventional cacao, there are some people that are skipping the process of the fermentation, but this is crucial for both the delicious taste of cacao, but also on how we absorb the nutrients. And this is something that the ancestors, the grandfathers and grandmothers understood beyond the logical mind. They connected with the spirit of the plant, and the plant guided them into understanding what the steps are in order to receive the sacred beverage.
So for Cacao Lab and the Alchemist Kitchen, there is going to be a ceremony on February 8th. So for people that are listening and would like to attend, check us out on our events page. So let's continue. There's so much to unpack in what you just said, Florencia. But let's start out with the land itself. So you mentioned regenerative agriculture, right? So we have the traditional mass-produced, in some ways, monoculture where there's only one plant. But you talk about regenerative where there's more biodiversity. How does the is it okay to say tribe? Is that how we want to call the farmers? Are they in a tribe? And how do they sustain the regenerative aspect of agriculture within their community? Because I know you mentioned you're in Ecuador right now. So how can give us a picture of how that is happening right now in Ecuador?
So I find that there's big farms everywhere, but here there's a lot of small family farms. And those family farms are passing down the traditions orally. For us, a lot of times we need things written down, and again, coming back to the logical mind. But I find that part of this journey and bringing their regenerative practices is understanding that this is nothing new. The indigenous communities have been practicing this way since the beginning of time. It's the language of nature. And they learn it not through sitting in a classroom and understanding this is how the plant works, but it's really being in the experience. The farmers are going with their children to teach them the ways of the plant, to teach them the language of the plants. And they gather after a day of farming, and they sit in community and in family and share stories and share ways. I've been here with many different communities, beginning in the Amazon, and then we headed to the Andes, just in this trip alone. And in each space, we got to share, okay, this is how, this culture does this is how we do it. And they begin to exchange understandings and ancient teachings amongst each other. And this came naturally to them because this is what they do with their own families. So the information and the knowledge, the wisdom is passed down through experience and also through oral tradition. And I find the beautiful thing about, working with the communities directly, you get to meet the families and understand that it's not a mass piece of land that they have. It's, each family has their own space that they're taking care of, and they're cultivating these practices within their own space. And I think this is a really powerful teaching of really feeling and thinking and dreaming and visioning globally, but beginning to act locally. We need to really start taking care of our own environment. And if each of us were doing that, I think the land and the farming would be a lot different.
So I'm curious, what brought you to this space? So you was born in Bariloche, Argentina. I'm saying it right. And so take us back to your childhood. Like, was there any indication, I want to, be able to travel and go to Ecuador and get the ceremonial cacao and, teach people? Was that the plan, or like how did you start with this? Like, how was it from your childhood to here?
So I come from, as you mentioned, Bariloche, which you said it beautifully. And Bariloche has a lot of chocolate. definitely not ceremonial cacao, but there's a lot of chocolate. It's a small town that has great skiing, and each corner of our downtown has like a chocolate shop. So I grew up so in love with chocolate for indulgence only. But when in my early mid 20s, I went to Guatemala for my first time, where the tradition of cacao is very present. And I had my first cacao ceremony with an indigenous elder, and I really felt at home. And I always say I was very far from home, but for the first time, I felt back in my heart, and I understood, that this was the way that I wanted to connect with myself. I didn't know what that would look like, but I knew that this was something that I was very curious about, and I wanted to understand more. My brother and I and my mom moved from Argentina to the States when I was 11, and I don't know if the audience here knows about Argentina, but there was a lot of immigration that went to Argentina after World War II. There was this movement called the green gold for mate, which is a type of herb. And a lot of people migrated to Argentina for, this development and the dreamland. So a lot of Argentina, although there are indigenous communities there, a lot of people had lost their connection to their roots. And going to the States, I find that I lost my roots. I lost my own connection to my roots. And there was always a part of me that felt like I didn't belong in the States, but I didn't belong in Argentina. And when I started walking this path in relation to being guided by the indigenous nations and receiving their understandings, I realized that I didn't need to be from there, or I didn't need to be from, either place, because I was a part of it all. And what allowed me to have that gift was being able to understand the ways of, the Hispanic and the South American nations, while also understanding the ways of the States. And I find that this path has brought me and has called me to really begin my own journey back to my own roots and be able to get to know who I really am, and at the same time embrace how important the indigenous nations are in these times, where I know I'm not alone in not knowing really who came before me, or where do I belong. And the indigenous nations always remembered, they always communicated with our sacred mother, and they always communicated with the plants, so they never forgot. And I feel that they have a lot to teach us and to share with us. And the mission that cacao has given me is um, become a bridge and be a voice for the communities, so they can really begin to share their vast wisdom, globally, because it's a necessity right now for us to really understand who we are, where we come from, and where are we going, what legacy are we leaving to our future generations.
Right, yeah, seven generations, right? 7 generations before us, 7 generations, that comes after us. Like what exact, and we're here in the middle. So thank you so much for those lessons. For people that won't be able to attend the the cacao ceremony in February, we do have the bars available online at the Alchemist Kitchen. And one of the beautiful things is that when you open it, that there is a QR code where you could have a meditation led by Florencia. So there are 4 elements, right? So maybe Florencia, you may want to talk a little bit more about the bars and your inspiration behind it, and what can people expect?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. As we talked about, what is ceremonial cacao? Ceremonial cacao is a living spirit. It's a living energy, and it's important to understand that it's not just cup of cacao that we're drinking, but it's just like taking ourselves in a play date, right, with the spirit. And so each bar that you're mentioning is embodying each element, which also carries a spirit. It carries an energy and teachings for us. So each bar has an experience, a journey that you can embark upon to connect deeper with the medicine of cacao, as well as connecting with the element that you're feeling, drawn to. And there's always that question of like, which element do I choose? Like, how do I know which one is my element? Is it through zodiac signs, or is it? And I think it's more about, if the zodiac sign is the way you want to do it, amazing. If it's like, if you're feeling that you're needing more of that energy, amazing. It's not one way. It's how do you want to connect with that element? When we were receiving, the message of understanding what each element was representing, what I wanted to really share with the world through these bars is how do we begin to connect with the natural world? And regardless of where we come from, earth, water, fire, air, these are universal languages that every nation understands beyond the words, right? It's an essence that the every community carries. So the way that I would choose the elements, and again, each person can do it in their own way, is of understanding what is the essence that my experience is needing right now. So if I'm looking for more creativity, I find that water purifies us. And oftentimes when we're blocked in our creativity is because we have too much in our minds and we can't come into the heart. So water is also fluid, and it brings that connection to the fluidity of life. And water for a lot of the communities is also the essence of where the dream world comes from. It's the womb of our sacred mother. And so the dreams are then materialized, but they are first connected to the creative expression. So I find that water is really great for creativity. Earth is when we're really needing to ground. If we are ever feeling, kind of lost, we can take off our socks, connect with the earth, and boom, there's that instant grounding. So the earth element is there to support us in that essence and to really coming back home to ourselves. If we're traveling a lot, I feel like the earth element can give us that stability and that comfort. The fire for me is, right now there's so much movement happening, and it can bring up a lot of insecurities, a lot of fears, a lot of hesitation. And I find that the fire element can really burn away any toxicity that is moving through our emotional body. And at the same time, for many indigenous nations, is the communication between the physical and the natural world, the world of spirit. So I find that the fire can give us the courage, the strength, and the transmutation, the transformation that we are needing. So when we're feeling very, very insecure about a decision, or very feeling like a lot of doubt, I find that the energy of the fire, the medicine, and this element of fire can really support us in that way. And then we also have the air, and air, a lot of my teachers say that our words are taken in through the wind and are offered to the creator in the former of life. So it is through the breath of life that we have the vitality. It is through our songs that we offer our invocations, our prayers to the energies that support us. But it's also the breath that gives us the support to communicate. So this element, I think, is really good when we're needing to have a compassionate conversation, whether it's with ourselves or with someone that we care about. If there's a lot of blockages that it may be coming into some sort of relationship, and not just an intimate relationship, but maybe a family member, a friend, having a cup of cacao allows us to speak from the heart. And so when we're using the element of air, it's clear communication that comes from the heart. So I really recommend the air blend for that way. Or if we're wanting to activate our voices, having a cup of the air blend and then doing some songs would be a really beautiful practice.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Now I know what I want, I want to get for myself. And so we're also planning on having in March a series of classes with Florencia. So watch out for that. The page, I don't think it's up yet, but sign up for the newsletter so you get to find out all the latest and greatest events that we have. Florencia, any final words?
Well, I just want to share my gratitude for the series that we're co-creating. I'm really, really excited about this because oftentimes, I do a lot of work with cacao, the medicine of cacao, and ceremony and ritual, and I do a lot of facilitating as well. And then I also have my other aspect of working with dreams through a different mentor and elder. So to be able to bridge these both ways to go deeper into our own journey is such a gift. And there's so much that we receive through our dreams that because we don't remember our dreams, it's not that we're missing out, but it will take much longer for us to integrate those teachings. So through working with the medicine of cacao to open our hearts and come back to our passion, our creativity, the exploration of the self, while also bringing awareness to the connection to our dreams, we can really, in these times that there's so much change, when we look at it from the outside world, it feels like a lot of uncertainty, but it's really a lot of movement. So when we can anchor that energy and find the medicine within all of this rapid movement and change, I think there's a lot of possibilities for really new beginnings and redirecting our ways of living to come back into the communion with our sacred mother. So thank you for trusting me and for trusting, the space into creating this beautiful journey.
Thank you so much. And so check out the Alchemist Kitchen website, and we'll have Florencia come back and give us more wisdom. There's so much to unpack here. So thank you.
Thank you.